Who was Leonidas of Tarentum? Imagine being a poet so devoted to your craft that your words have survived for over 2 millennia, even though you spent most of your life wandering, writing about the humble and the forgotten. This was Leonidas of Tarentum, the nomadic poet who captured the essence of everyday life so powerfully that his impact is still felt today. Leonidas of Tarentum, a poet who lived in the 3rd century BCE, was not one of the grand figures of Greek history. He wasn't a ruler or a conqueror, and his name doesn't echo through the ages with the same thunder as Homer or Sophocles. Yet, in the realm of Greek literature, Leonidas made a lasting mark, not with epic tales of gods and heroes, but with brief, poignant reflections on the ordinary lives of everyday people. Leonidas was born in Tarentum, a Greek colony in Magna Graecia, southern Italy, which was an important cultural center during the Hellenistic period. Although details of his personal life remain sparse, his poetry reveals much about the man behind the verses. In his poems, he often portrayed himself as a wandering poet, a humble figure who traveled from town to town, observing the lives of fishermen, shepherds, artisans, and the rural poor. Unlike many of his contemporaries who focused on grand themes of heroism and nobility, Leonidas chose to write about the unsung heroes of daily life, people who struggled to survive. Much like himself, Leonidas hailed from the city of Tarentum, one of the most prosperous Greek colonies in southern Italy, part of the region known as Magna Graecia. At the time, Tarentum was a bustling, cosmopolitan city that served as a cultural bridge between Greece and Italy. Despite the city's wealth and status, Leonidas' poetry reflects a life far removed from luxury. He positioned himself as a marginal figure, someone who lived simply and found poetry in the small moments and struggles of everyday existence. His work offers a glimpse into a world often overlooked in the grand narratives of Greek mythology and history. Instead of focusing on the exploits of kings or warriors, Leonidas wrote about the lives of common people, fishermen mending their nets, shepherds watching their flocks, and old men reflecting on their mortality. His poems often evoke a sense of humility and melancholy, drawing attention to the fleeting nature of life and the inevitable passage of time. Leonidas probably wouldn't have been invited to the grand banquets of the Greek elite, but if you needed a heartfelt epigram about the life of the local blacksmith, he was your guy. One of the most striking aspects of Leonidas' poetry is how he presents himself as a simple, wandering poet, living on the fringes of society. Unlike many poets who sought the patronage of kings or wealthy nobles, Leonidas embraced his modest lifestyle. In his epigrams, he sometimes speaks of the hardships of life, suggesting that he identified more with the poor and marginalized than with the elite. His portrayal of himself as a nomad wandering through the world, detached from material wealth and status, gives his work a timeless quality. Leonidas wasn't concerned with grand political or philosophical ideas. He was more interested in the small, everyday struggles that define human existence. This self-awareness sets him apart from other poets of his time, who often wrote from a place of privilege or addressed the concerns of the powerful. Leonidas' poetry reflects a deep empathy for the common person, and his focus on the humble and the forgotten speaks to his own experiences. As someone who lived on the margins of society, Leonidas found poetry in the lives of those often overlooked shepherds tending their flocks, fishermen battling the sea, and craftsmen working tirelessly at their trades. Leonidas lived during the Hellenistic period, a time of significant change in the Greek world. After the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE, the vast empire he had built began to fragment into smaller kingdoms, each vying for power and influence. In this new era, cultural exchange flourished, and the centers of Greek civilization shifted from the traditional city-states like Athens and Sparta to new regions, including Magna Graecia, where Leonidas lived and worked. The Hellenistic era brought with it a new set of concerns and a different perspective on life. Greek poets began to move away from the grand, heroic narratives of the past, focusing instead on individual experiences and the human condition. Leonidas was one of the pioneers of this new literary trend. His poetry reflects the complexities of the time, a world where empires had risen and fallen, where the average person was often caught between forces much larger than themselves. Leonidas' work also captures the growing sense of cosmopolitanism in the Hellenistic world. As a traveler and observer, he was well positioned to comment on the diversity of human experiences across different regions and cultures. His poems, though brief, offer a window into the lives of ordinary people during a period of significant upheaval and transformation. At the heart of Leonidas' literary legacy is his mastery of the epigram, a short, often witty or poignant poem that packs a punch in just a few lines. The epigram was a popular form in Greek poetry, traditionally used for inscriptions on tombstones or monuments. However, Leonidas transformed the epigram into a literary art form, using it to express deep emotions and philosophical reflections. Leonidas' epigrams often focus on themes of mortality, humility, and the passage of time. His ability to capture profound truths in just a handful of lines made his work stand out, and his poems became widely admired for their clarity, conciseness, and emotional depth. While other poets of his time were writing lengthy verses filled with mythological allusions, Leonidas chose to focus on the simplicity of life, using the brevity of the epigram to make his words all the more powerful. His epigrams also have a sense of melancholic humor, as he reflects on the inevitability of death and the struggles of life with a wry smile. For Leonidas, poetry was not about glorifying the gods or the deeds of heroes, but about finding meaning in the everyday experiences that defined human existence. Think of Leonidas as the ancient Greek master of the mic drop. He didn't need 10,000 lines to make his point, just a few sharp, unforgettable ones. The unique style of Leonidas of Tarentum was a master of the epigram, a poetic form that, in his hands, became a powerful tool for capturing the subtleties of human life. In the Greek world, epigrams were traditionally used for inscriptions on tombs or monuments, brief, often formulaic pieces meant to honor the dead or commemorate an event. But Leonidas saw in this short form the potential for something far greater. He transformed the epigram into a literary medium, using it to explore complex emotional and philosophical ideas. His unique style blended humor, melancholy, and a deep sense of humanity, making his work timeless and deeply relatable. Before delving into Leonidas' innovations, it's essential to understand what an epigram is. In its simplest form, an epigram is a short, standalone poem, often no more than a few lines. Originally, these were inscriptions meant to be carved on stone commemorations of the dead or markers for significant events. The brevity of the form required a certain economy of language. Poets had to be precise in their wording, distilling complex emotions into just a few words. But while the epigram had been used for centuries as a practical form of verse, Leonidas and his contemporaries in the Hellenistic period saw its potential as a vehicle for personal reflection. For Leonidas, the epigram was more than a public inscription. It became a way to explore the inner workings of human life, to express sorrow, joy, and humor in ways that felt intimate and immediate. Leonidas' ability to condense deep ideas into short, impactful lines was a hallmark of his style. His epigrams often dealt with universal themes such as mortality, the passage of time, and the struggles of daily life. But unlike the grandiose works of epic poets, Leonidas chose to focus on the humble realities of the world around him. He wrote about fishermen, laborers, and craftsmen, people whose lives were marked by toil and hardship, but who were rarely the subjects of high poetry. Take, for example, One of his epigrams about a fisherman: I, poor Philo, spent my life catching fish, but when the winds were strong, I went home empty-handed. In just 2 lines, Leonidas paints a vivid picture of a man whose life is shaped by both the unforgiving nature of his work and the whims of fate. There is a melancholy in these words, but also a kind of acceptance or recognition that life is often out of our control, and that survival requires both resilience and resignation. Leonidas' gift for brevity didn't just make his poems accessible, it also gave them a lasting emotional impact. He could convey the fragility of life in a few lines, making his poems resonate with readers long after they've been read. His style was uniquely suited to the epigram form, which required poets to cut to the heart of a matter without wasting words. It's like Leonidas invented the less is more rule. If Twitter had existed in ancient Greece, he had been the king of 140-character wisdom. One of the most striking features of Leonidas' poetry is the way he blended humor with melancholy. His poems often reflect a world filled with hardship, poverty, and the inevitability of death, but they do so with a sense of ironic detachment. Leonidas was not afraid to laugh at the absurdities of life, even while acknowledging its pain. This balance between humor and sorrow is what gives his work its enduring appeal. For instance, in one epigram, Leonidas writes about an old man who can no longer work due to his failing strength. Instead of dwelling purely on the sadness of the situation, Leonidas infuses the poem with a wry sense of humor. Old Epicrides no longer sharpens his tools. He now spends his days sharpening his wit instead. Here, Leonidas captures the bittersweet reality of aging. The man has lost his physical abilities, but he has gained a certain wisdom, a sharpness of mind that allows him to laugh at his own misfortune. The humor doesn't erase the underlying sadness, but it makes the situation more bearable, more human. This ironic tone runs through many of Leonidas' poems. His epigrams are filled with characters who face the struggles of life, poverty, sickness, aging, but who manage to maintain a sense of humor about their circumstances. This balance between lightness and seriousness is one of the reasons Leonidas' poetry has remained so resonant through the centuries. While many Greek poets focused on the lives of gods and heroes, Leonidas was concerned with the ordinary people of his time. His poetry doesn't glorify the powerful or the elite. Instead, it gives voice to the laborers, artisans, and peasants who made up the fabric of Greek society. In this way, Leonidas was a poet of the people, someone who understood the daily struggles of life and wrote about them with compassion and insight. One of the reasons Leonidas' work resonates so deeply is that he wrote about people who were often invisible in the grand narratives of Greek literature. He saw beauty and meaning in the simple acts of survival, in the fisherman's battle against the sea, in the potter's patient shaping of clay, in the shepherd's long days spent watching over his flock. Through his poetry, Leonidas elevated these humble lives, showing that they, too, were worthy of artistic representation. In a world where status and power were often seen as the measures of a person's worth, Leonidas offered a different perspective. He believed that there was something noble in the daily grind, in the perseverance of ordinary people who face challenges with dignity and humor. His poems remind us that even the smallest lives are filled with meaning and value. Leonidas' influence on the Greek epigrammatic tradition. Let's continue with the exploration of Leonidas' influence on the epigrammatic tradition and how his work laid the groundwork for future poets. Topic 3. Leonidas' influence on the Greek epigrammatic tradition. Estimated length 6,000 characters. While Leonidas of Tarentum may not have achieved the widespread fame of poets like Homer or Sophocles, his work left an indelible mark on the history of Greek literature, particularly in the development of the epigrammatic tradition. His innovations in the genre, characterized by a focus on ordinary life, brevity, and emotional depth, influenced many later poets and played a pivotal role in the rise of Hellenistic poetry. The Hellenistic period was a time of transformation in the Greek world. After the conquest of Alexander the Great, Greek culture spread across vast territories, and the old city-states like Athens and Sparta were no longer the cultural centers they had once been. In this new landscape, literature began to shift away from epic tales of gods and heroes toward more personal, introspective, and everyday themes. It was in this environment that the epigram, with its concise and direct style, became a powerful literary tool. By the time Leonidas began writing, the epigram had already been used for centuries in Greece, primarily as a form of inscription on gravestones or monuments. These early epigrams were often formulaic, used to commemorate the dead or celebrate victories in battle or athletic competition. However, with the rise of the Hellenistic period, poets like Leonidas began to see the potential of the epigram as a more literary form, one that could express not just public sentiments, but also personal reflections. Leonidas was among the first to push the boundaries of the epigram, using it to convey a wide range of emotions and themes. His poems were no longer just inscriptions meant for tombstones, they became deeply personal works that explored the complexities of human life. His use of the epigram helped establish the form as one of the key genres of Hellenistic poetry. The Hellenistic period, with its emphasis on individual experience and emotional nuance, was the perfect cultural environment for the epigram to flourish. As poets sought new ways to express their thoughts and feelings, they turned to the concise, punchy style of the epigram, following in the footsteps of Leonidas. Leonidas' innovations in the epigram didn't go unnoticed. His ability to balance humor, melancholy, and philosophical reflection within the tight constraints of the epigram inspired a new generation of poets who followed in his footsteps. Poets like Asclepiades, Callimachus, and Meleager all drew inspiration from Leonidas' work, further developing the form and contributing to the growing tradition of epigrammatic poetry. Asclepiades, for example, took Leonidas' emphasis on the common man and applied it to his own reflections on love and desire. Callimachus, one of the greatest Hellenistic poets, was influenced by Leonidas' conciseness and brevity, using the epigram to express complex ideas with an economy of words. Meleager, who would later compile the Greek anthology, also paid tribute to Leonidas, including many of his poems in the collection and acknowledging him as one of the pioneers of the epigram. The influence of Leonidas can also be seen in the tone and style of later epigrammatic poets. His blend of self-reflection and empathy for the common person resonated with later writers who sought to express their own feelings of isolation, longing, and mortality in short, impactful verses. Leonidas' focus on the mundane and the melancholic became a hallmark of the epigrammatic tradition, inspiring poets to find beauty in simplicity and depth in brevity. One of Leonidas' most important contributions to the epigrammatic tradition was his shift from the public to the personal. Before Leonidas, most epigrams were used for public purposes, inscriptions on tombs, dedications on monuments, or commemorations of victories. These epigrams were often formulaic, serving more as records of events than as vehicles for personal expression. Leonidas changed that. He took the epigram out of the realm of the public and brought it into the private sphere, using it to explore personal feelings and individual experiences. His poems reflect the emotions of everyday life: sadness, hope, resignation, and even bitterness, all captured in just a few lines. This was a major shift in the way epigrams were used and understood, and it opened the door for future poets to continue this tradition of introspective and reflective writing. By making the epigram more personal, Leonidas made it more relatable. His poems were no longer just inscriptions on stone, they were windows into the soul. His ability to distill complex emotions into short, powerful verses made his work resonate with readers across time and place. Leonidas took the epigram from "Here lies so-and-so" to "Here's how I feel about life" in 30 words or less, and honestly, we're all better for it. The Greek anthology, also known as the Anthologia Graeca, is a monumental collection of epigrams compiled over several centuries, and it stands as one of the greatest literary treasures of the ancient world. Within this collection, Leonidas' work features prominently, his epigrams preserved alongside those of other great poets. The anthology is divided into different thematic sections covering everything from love to death to victory, and Leonidas' poems appear throughout, demonstrating the versatility of his work. The Anthologia Graeca would become a crucial resource for poets, scholars, and readers for generations, offering a window into the epigrammatic tradition of ancient Greece. Through the inclusion of Leonidas' work in this collection, his influence extended far beyond his lifetime, ensuring that his unique voice would continue to inspire readers and writers for centuries to come. Many of Leonidas' epigrams focus on themes of mortality and the passing of time, making them particularly suited for inclusion in the anthology section on funerary epigrams. However, his work also appears in sections dealing with love, friendship, and philosophy, showing the wide range of topics he addressed in his poetry. In a sense, the Anthologia Graeca serves as a testament to Leonidas' lasting influence. His work helped establish the epigram as one of the most important forms of Hellenistic literature, and his poems, with their delicate blend of humor, pathos, and philosophical reflection, set the standard for generations of poets to come. A simple and melancholic life, Leonidas of Tarentum had a unique talent for finding poetry in life's small moments. While many of his contemporaries focused on gods, heroes, or grand myths, Leonidas turned his attention to the humble experiences of ordinary people. His poetry explored the fleeting nature of life, the inevitability of death, and the quiet dignity of those who lived modest, often overlooked lives. In doing so, he made the everyday struggles of fishermen, shepherds, and craftsmen feel as profound as the battles of warriors or the loves of kings. His work is filled with a sense of melancholy, yet it offers deep insight into what it means to be human. Leonidas' poetry is often marked by an intense awareness of poverty and the challenges that come with living a simple, hard-working life. He wrote about the lives of people who didn't have the luxury of wealth or the protection of social status. These were the men and women who worked tirelessly, struggling to survive from day to day, yet finding moments of peace or reflection in the midst of their labors. Take, for example, his epigram about a humble fisherman, "Here lies Telesicles, poor as when he was alive," who spent his days in the cold sea breeze, never catching much fish, but always trying. In just a few lines, Leonidas captures the essence of a life of perseverance, a man who worked every day, knowing he might not catch enough fish, but doing it anyway because that was his way of surviving. The poem is deeply humble in its subject, yet profoundly moving. It highlights the quiet, persistent effort of the fisherman, whose life may not seem remarkable, but who carries the same determination as any great hero. For Leonidas, heroism didn't always come with swords and shields. Sometimes it was found in the simple determination to keep going, even when life seemed indifferent to your struggles. Leonidas wasn't interested in the flashy lives of the rich. If someone was working 12 hours a day and barely getting by, that was the real epic in his book. One of the most recurring themes in Leonidas' work is death, which he often treated with a kind of stoic acceptance. His epigrams frequently touch on the inevitability of death and the fact that it comes for everyone, regardless of wealth, status, or effort. There is a melancholy to his reflections on mortality, but also a sense of resignation and acknowledgement that death is the great equalizer, a fate shared by kings and commoners alike. In one of his most famous epigrams, Leonidas writes, "Do not mourn for me, stranger, for death is our destiny. Whether we plow the fields or rule the land, whether we are rich in gold or poor in spirit, in the end, we all lie beneath the same earth." Here, Leonidas captures the universality of death, reminding the reader that no matter how we live, we all share the same fate. His tone is not bitter, but rather one of calm acceptance. Death, in Leonidas' view, is not something to be feared, but something to be understood and accepted as part of life's natural course. His focus on death also reflects his own life as a wandering poet, someone who likely experienced the uncertainty and fragility of existence firsthand. For Leonidas, death was always near, and his poetry reflects a deep awareness of that proximity. Yet, his treatment of death is not morbid, it is almost comforting in its acknowledgement of the inevitable. Closely tied to the theme of death in Leonidas' work is the idea of life's fleeting nature. Many of his epigrams reflect on the passage of time and the transient quality of human existence. For Leonidas, life was like a brief moment, a fleeting instant in the grand scheme of the universe. His poetry often conveys a sense of urgency and awareness that time is slipping away and that we must make the most of the little time we have. In an epigram about an old man, Leonidas reflects on how quickly life passes. "Once I was young, with strength to till the fields, now my hands tremble, too weak to hold the plow. The years have flown like a gust of wind. One moment I was a boy, the next an old man." This poem captures the feeling that many of us have experienced, the realization that time moves faster than we can grasp, that we age without even noticing, until one day we find ourselves wondering where the years have gone. Leonidas, in his typically concise style, manages to convey the bittersweet nature of aging, balancing the sorrow of lost youth with the acceptance of old age. The idea of impermanence is central to Leonidas' philosophy. For him, life is precious precisely because it is fleeting. His poems encourage us to reflect on the temporary nature of our existence and to appreciate the small moments that make life meaningful. While other Greek poets were writing about grand, mythological heroes like Achilles and Hercules, Leonidas focused on the everyday heroism of ordinary people. For Leonidas, true heroism wasn't found on the battlefield or in the halls of kings, it was found in the quiet struggles of those who worked hard, lived simply, and faced life's challenges with dignity. In one of his epigrams, Leonidas writes about a humble shepherd, Daphnis, who once led his flock through the hills, now rests beneath the same earth he walked upon. He did not fight in wars or build great cities, but he lived a good life, and that is enough. In this short poem, Leonidas captures the essence of quiet heroism. Daphnis wasn't a warrior or a statesman, but he lived his life with integrity and care for his flock. For Leonidas, that was enough to make him worthy of remembrance. The poem reflects Leonidas' belief that a good life is one lived with humility, where one's actions, however small, carry meaning and value. This focus on the common person and the dignity of labor was revolutionary in its own way. In a literary world where grandiosity and myth were often prized, Leonidas found beauty and significance in the lives of ordinary people. His poems remind us that there is something heroic in the simple act of living and doing one's work with care and compassion, even if the world doesn't notice. The literary legacy of Leonidas of Tarentum may not have achieved the fame of the great epic poets, but his work left a lasting mark on the development of Greek literature, particularly in the form of the epigram. His innovations with this short, impactful form of poetry influenced not only his Hellenistic contemporaries but also poets in the Roman world and even later writers. The themes of humility, mortality, and the dignity of the common man that run through his work made his poetry timeless. Through his unique approach to the epigram, Leonidas became a pivotal figure whose ideas continued to shape literary traditions for centuries. Before Leonidas, the majority of Greek poetry focused on mythology, the lives of heroes, and the deeds of the gods. Poems were often epic in scope, concerned with grand narratives and legendary figures. Leonidas, however, took a different approach. By focusing on the ordinary lives of humble individuals, he expanded the range of subjects that poetry could address. He gave voice to the common people, those who lived modestly and faced the daily struggles of survival, thus creating space for more personal, reflective, and human-centered themes in Greek literature. In doing so, Leonidas helped lay the foundation for what would become a major trend in Hellenistic poetry that moved toward individualism and a focus on emotional introspection. His work opened the door for later poets to explore themes of love, loss, aging, and loneliness in ways that were more intimate and less concerned with the grandiosity of mythological figures. Leonidas' work, particularly his use of the epigram, had a significant impact on the development of Roman poetry. The Roman poets, particularly during the Augustan age, admired the Greek tradition of epigrams and adopted many of its conventions. Poets like Catullus, Martial, and even Virgil were influenced by the brevity, emotional depth, and what found in Leonidas' poetry. Catullus, in particular, is known for his short, poignant poems that often reflect personal emotions, anger, love, longing, and for his ability to communicate these feelings with conciseness. This style echoes the influence of poets like Leonidas, who had demonstrated that great meaning could be packed into just a few lines. Martial, the Roman master of the epigram, directly followed the tradition that Leonidas helped establish, using short, witty verses to comment on everyday life and the social issues of his time. Leonidas' focus on ordinary people and the common struggles of life also resonated with Roman poets, who found in his work a model for how poetry could address the lives of non-elite individuals. For the Romans, who valued practical wisdom and moral lessons, Leonidas' exploration of humility and the transience of life was particularly appealing. His poems offered a model of reflective, moral poetry that was adopted and adapted by Roman writers as they sought to build their own literary traditions. One of the reasons Leonidas' work has endured for so long is his timelessness. His epigrams, despite being written more than 2 millennia ago, still resonate with readers today. This is because his poetry addresses universal themes: life, death, poverty, the passage of time that transcends specific historical contexts. Whether we are living in the ancient world or the modern one, the emotions Leonidas explored remain relevant. His concise style also contributes to the lasting appeal of his work. In an age where attention spans are short and communication is often quick, Leonidas' ability to convey profound thoughts in just a few lines feels surprisingly modern. His epigrams are compact yet full of meaning, making them easy to remember and share. In many ways, Leonidas anticipated the modern trend toward minimalist expression, where brevity is seen as a virtue. His poems, often melancholic, but with a sense of quiet acceptance, speak to the human condition in a way that feels universal. Whether he is writing about the inevitability of death or the quiet dignity of a shepherd's life, Leonidas taps into the shared experiences that connect people across time and place. His work reminds us that, despite all the changes that history brings, some truths about human life remain constant. Leonidas' work continues to be a subject of interest for modern scholars, who have recognized his importance in the development of Greek and Roman literature. His epigrams are frequently studied for their linguistic precision, emotional depth, and philosophical insights. Scholars have noted how his work bridges the gap between traditional Greek values such as honor, bravery, and piety and the more personal, introspective concerns of the Hellenistic age. Modern poets have also been inspired by the epigrammatic tradition that Leonidas helped establish. His influence can be seen in the works of poets who value conciseness and emotional clarity, such as Ezra Pound and William Carlos Williams, both of whom use short forms to convey powerful emotions and images. The idea that poetry doesn't need to be long or elaborate to be meaningful, a concept that Leonidas championed, continues to inspire writers today. In addition, the Greek anthology, which preserved many of Leonidas' epigrams, remains a valuable resource for both scholars and poets. The anthology has allowed Leonidas' work to be passed down through the centuries, ensuring that his voice continues to be heard by new generations. His epigrams, though ancient, feel relevant and alive, offering lessons on humility, resilience, and the human condition that are as applicable now as they were in the Hellenistic period. The legacy of Leonidas of Tarentum extends far beyond his lifetime. His innovations in the epigrammatic tradition, his focus on the lives of ordinary people, and his ability to distill deep truths into just a few lines have influenced poets for centuries. From the Hellenistic period to the Roman Empire and even into the modern age, Leonidas' work has continued to resonate with readers who appreciate his humble insights into the human condition. Leonidas' ability to capture the fleeting nature of life, the inevitability of death, and the quiet dignity of simple existence has made his poetry timeless. He proved that poetry doesn't need to be grand or elaborate to be powerful, it just needs to be honest. His work has inspired generations of poets to explore the beauty of brevity, and his influence on the development of both Greek and Roman literature is undeniable. So, what do you think of Leonidas? Does his focus on the common man and his masterful use of the epigram make him one of the most relatable poets of the ancient world? Let us know your thoughts on how this humble poet from Tarentum changed Greek literature forever.
By my side, intense, strong, no fear to face, nowhere to hide, intense. I subscribe to this channel, click like today, because content like this just lights my way. Intense and slow.